The vast black ocean of space stretched without end, cold and silent yet, alive with hidden dangers and secrets for countless empires, had risen and fallen in this endless, dark sea. But the Vaishar believed they were different. They believed they were eternal. Their empire had crushed rivals for centuries. They had expanded across stars and taken worlds with arrogance and fire. They were feared by smaller races and respected by those who bowed to their power. The Vaishar fleet was proud, mighty, and certain no force in the galaxy could ever stand against them. On the edge of a forgotten sector, their warships gathered sleek silver hulls glinting against the dim light of a distant sun. The fleet commander stood tall on the bridge of the flagship, his eyes burning with cold pride. He had crushed rebellions and seen entire planets surrender at the mere sight of his banner. He expected this mission to be no different, for the scouts had reported a strange vessel drifting alone among the dead stars, a vessel with a signature no one had ever seen before, though. Commander smirked as his officers reported their findings. A massive ship larger than any single craft the Vaishar had built, but still just one vessel. What could a single ship do against an empire? His laughter spread across the bridge, and the crew joined in arrogance, filling the air like poison. They believed it would be another conquest, another easy victory, another name to add to the long list of those who fell before them. He gave the order to scan the vessel, the bridge filled with the hum of power as sensors locked onto the target beams of invisible light. Swept over the strange ship, data began to flow across the screens. At first the officers looked calm, numbers flashing, lines of power, mass density, weapons count, and shield strength, all routine. But then silence began to spread as the numbers grew higher and higher and higher. The commander frowned, tapping his clawed fingers against the Real. He demanded a report. But the officers hesitated. One stammered, then another, until finally one whispered the words. No one wanted to hear this. It's impossible. The data told a story that no one could understand. The ship was not only large, it was dense, impossibly dense. Its hull, layered with alloys no computer could identify. Its power core radiated energy that should not exist. Weapons signatures reached beyond all known technology. The Vaishar prided themselves on being masters of war. Yet what the scan revealed was not war. It was something beyond war. It was annihilation wrapped in steel. The commander barked for a second, scanned the computers. Strained beams of light touched the Dreadnought again and again. Each time the numbers rose higher. The sensors screamed warnings. Sparks erupted from consoles. The crew stared in horror, their pride melting into something they had not felt in generations: fear. And still the strange ship did nothing. It floated silent, unmoving, indifferent. To the mighty fleet around it, the silence itself was worse than any weapon the Vaishar were used to, enemies begging or screaming or fighting back. This silence was cold, unshaken, and deliberate. The commander felt sweat on his neck, but he refused to bow to fear. He shouted that it must be a trick, a phantom reading a clever disguise from a weaker race. He ordered the fleet to hold position and watch the Dreadnought. Their arrogance was cracking, but not yet broken. Minutes passed, long, heavy. Minutes. Screens flickered under the strain of impossible readings. The Dreadnought's power signature pulsed like the heartbeat of a god. Growing stronger with each passing breath, one officer whispered that if the readings were true, the Dreadnought carried enough firepower to erase entire systems, not planet systems, and yet it remained still. The crew began to murmur, whispers spreading like fire across the bridge. What if the ship was alive? What if it was watching them even now? What if it knew what they were doing? The commander slammed his fist against the rail and ordered silence, but the unease did not fade. Their eyes remained locked on the massive silent shape in the void. Then a sound filled the ship, not from their own systems, but from deep within the Dreadnought, a low hum that shook the void itself. Vibrations rattled through their hull. The sound was not a weapon, yet it made every alien heart beat. Faster screens glitched, weapons panels flickered, some systems shut down, entirely without explanation. Panic rose in the lower decks, shouts and screams echoing through the comm channels. The commander demanded control. But no one could explain what was happening. The Dreadnought had not moved, had not fired, yet its presence alone was tearing at their technology, as though the very idea of resistance was being crushed under an unseen ski. The crew stared in growing terror as the hum grew louder. vibrating in their bones a reminder that something far greater than them had awakened. Still, the commander clung to Arrogance. Though his voice cracked, he ordered the fleet to prepare weapons to show this silent ship. In the strength of the Empire, his words fell empty. Many of the crew hesitated, their hands trembling over controls as if they already knew firing would mean death. The hum-stop silence returned heavier than before. Then the Dreadnought released a single pulse across the void. It was not a weapon, at least not in the traditional sense. No flames, no explosions. No missiles, but their entire fleet shook as if struck by an invisible wave. Every screen went black, then flashed white for a moment. Every soldier, every officer felt something pressing into their minds, a weight, an ancient presence that looked at them not as equals but as insects. Then it was gone. The screens returned, data flowed again, but nothing was the same. The crew sat frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. The Dreadnought still floated silent, unmoved, uncaring, but now they knew it was no trick, no illusion. For the first time in generations, the Vaishar felt fear, not the fear of defeat, not the fear of pain, but the deeper fear, the fear of facing something far beyond their understanding, something that should not exist, something that turned all their arrogance into dust. With a single glimpse, the commander tried to speak, but his voice broke. The words never came. His crew looked at him, their eyes wide with terror. His authority meant nothing now, for authority belonged to the silent Dreadnought, the fortress in the dark, the shadow that had awakened in deep in the void beyond human ears, beyond alien comprehension. The human Dreadnought waited, watching unshaken, unmoved, letting fear grow on its own, letting arrogance collapse into silence. The Vaishar fleet drifted in the shadow of the great ship, their hulls gleaming against the faint glow of distant stars, but the shine felt empty now. Hollow pride turned into a mask hiding the fear that spread among every officer and soldier. The silent Dreadnought loomed before them, vast and unmoving like a mountain that had grown in the dark void, its presence heavier than any world. The commander stood on the bridge, his eyes locked on the giant vessel, his mind screaming for answers. It should not exist. Nothing this large, nothing this powerful, nothing this silent could have been built without the Vaishar knowing his empire prided itself on knowledge and domination. Yet here was proof of something greater, and he refused to believe. Eth barked the order, run another scan, push the systems harder. I want the truth. His voice rang with desperation. Not command officers obeyed, but their hands shook the scan beams, fired invisible light crawling over the Dreadnought. Once again, the data came, and once again the screens screamed impossibilities. Power levels rose to unreadable levels, hull strength beyond comprehension. Weapons. So many weapons their computers could not count them. Consoles sparked, alarms blared. One station burst into fire. The crew rushed to put it out. The commander shouted, "Hold your positions!" But panic had begun to spread. The Dreadnought had not moved, not a single gun had fired yet. Its presence was tearing through their technology sensors. Screamed, then died. Weapons locked without command. Engines shut down and restarted as if something else now had control. Whispers ran across the bridge. This is not a ship. This is something else. It is alive. It is a fortress. It is a god. The commander roared. Silence. But his voice cracked. He pointed at the screen, demanding proof that it was only an illusion, a trick of data. But the truth was undeniable. The human ship was not just stronger, it was untouchable. Then the hum returned, low and deep, vibrating through the void, shaking the hulls of every Vaishar vessel. Crew covered their ears. Though no sound entered from outside, the vibration came from within their bones, their minds. Weapons panels flickered, targeting systems failed, lights dimmed across the fleet. One officer gasped. "We are being scanned. Not our ship, us." The Dreadnought was looking inside. "Us," the commander shouted. Nonsense. But fear rippled across the bridge. Eyes widened as screens filled with images, their personal data flashing across. Consuls' names, ranks, family histories, battles fought, crimes, committed, secrets. Whispered in shadows, the Dreadnought had reached inside their systems, inside their lives, tearing out everything they thought was hidden. Crew fell silent. Some wept, others begged to flee. One dropped to his knees, whispering prayers to gods long forgotten. The commander's face turned pale as his own secrets flashed across the screens. Crimes he had buried, victories stained with blood, betrayals even his thoughts laid bare for all to see, his authority shattered with each revelation. The hum grew louder. The fleet shuddered as though the void itself bent around the Dreadnought. Still the massive vessel did nothing but its silence. Its gaze pressed heavier than any. Attack! The commander, desperate to hold power, gave the order target. The ship, all weapons fire now. His voice broke as he spoke, but the command went out across the fleet, thousands of weapons. Armed lights blinked across the black void, the pride of the Vashar pointed its might at the single silent ship, but nothing happened. The weapons refused to fire missile tubes. Jammed plasma cannons shut down, railguns spun, then froze. The commander screamed at his officers, slamming his fists against the control rail. Why will they not fire? Why? One officer whispered. Because it does not want them to. The Dreadnought has taken control. Silence fell again. Every eye turned to the screen. The Dreadnought remained still, its massive hull cold, its lights dim, yet it held the fleet like insects trapped in amber. The commander shouted, retreat, engines to full burn. Get us out of here, but engines refused to obey. Thrusters sputtered. Some ships spun helplessly as though dragged by invisible hands. Navigation systems failed. Star maps blinked and vanished. They were lost in the dark. Their fleet was no longer in control. Fear spread faster than fire. Officers shouted. Crew ran through the halls. Soldiers dropped their weapons. No battle had been fought yet. The Vashar had already lost. Then came a sound, not a hum, not a vibration, but a voice. Calm, steady, unshaken. It filled every channel. It echoed through the walls. It vibrated inside their skulls. It was human. You should not have scanned us. The words were simple, but they froze every heart. The fleet commander stumbled back, his legs weak, his pride shattering. In that moment, the mighty empire faced a truth it had never known. It was prey. Their voice said, nothing more. Silence followed, heavier than before. The crew stared at the great ship, unmoving in the void. Its presence like a shadow, too vast to fight, too deep to escape. The commander tried to speak, but no words came. His mouth dry, his pride gone, his fleet broken. Ships that once brought terror now drifted helpless, like children lost in the dark before the fortress of humanity. The Dreadnought did not move. It did not fire. It did not need to. The silence itself was enough to destroy them. Arrogance turned to fear, and fear turned to despair. Still the human Dreadnought waited, watching, silent, patient, letting the weight of its presence break the empire without a single shot. The fleet drifted in the endless dark. Their pride shattered, their strength useless before the silent hung in the void, vast and unmoving like a mountain of steel, its cold shape casting fear into every mind. The Vashar had always believed they were masters of war, but now they trembled before something they could not fight, something they could not even understand. The commander stood on the bridge, his claws clutching the rail, his breath shallow. He wanted to speak, to command his voice to thunder with authority, but the words caught in his throat. The human voice still echoed in his mind. You should not have scanned us. Those simple words were heavier than any weapon, heavier than fire, heavier than death. Crew looked at him with wide eyes, waiting for orders. But their eyes no longer carried respect. They carried fear. They no longer believed in his strength. They no longer believed in their empire. They only believed in the silent ship that held them. In its grasp, the commander raised his voice. Engines restart, full burn, retreat. But the engines ignored his command. The thrusters flickered and died. The fleet was trapped, caught like prey in the web of a predator. And still the Dreadnought did nothing. Then the hum returned, deep and low, vibrating through their bones, their hearts, their very thoughts. Lights flickered across the bridge consoles. Spark systems shut down one by one. The Dreadnought had awakened. The crew shouted, shields failing, weapons offline, engines dead. One by one, the mighty warships fell silent, powerless, drifting helpless in the dark. The hum grew stronger, shaking the hull, rattling every beam, Adre, every bolt, until it felt as though the Dreadnought itself pressed down upon them. Then the lights died. The bridge plunged into blackness. Only the stars outside gave faint glow. The Dreadnought loomed larger, its outline a shadow against the void. Crew whispered prayers, begged for mercy. Some wept in silence. Others sat frozen, unable to move. Suddenly the lights returned, but not their lights, not Vashar lights. Every screen on every ship across the fleet glowed with a single image, the image of the Dreadnought. Its vast hull displayed in burning white lines, a fortress outlined. In fire and below it words written in human script, words they did not know yet. Somehow understood, you have been judged. The crew gasped. Some screamed, the commander's legs gave way, he fell to his knees. The words burned across every screen, repeating, again and again, you have been judged, you have been judged. The Dreadnought remained still, its silence unbroken, but the message carried more weight than any weapon the Vaishar had ever known. They had conquered worlds, slaughtered races, burned cities to ash, but now they stood helpless before one ship, one human ship that spoke with the power of gods. Commander forced himself to rise, his voice weak, open comes. I demand to speak with you, whoever commands that vessel. I demand parley for a long moment. Silence, then static filled the comes, then the voice returned. Calm, unshaken, the same human voice. You scanned us, you measured us, you thought yourself strong. Now you know the truth, the commander shouted back. This is a misunderstanding. We are willing to negotiate. We are willing to trade, to learn. We meant no harm. His words stumbled over lies. His crew stared at him, knowing the Empire had never traded, never negotiated, only conquered. His words sounded weak, even to his own ears. That voice answered simple, cold. You came with arrogance, now you will leave with fear. The commander begged, wait, please. We can talk. We can offer anything you want. Just let us leave. His voice cracked. He had never begged before, but pride was gone. Broken like glass, the silence that followed crushed him more than words. The hum grew louder. The Dreadnought vast hole lit with faint lights, running like rivers of fire across its surface. Weapons systems, coming to life, thousands of hidden ports. Glowing ready, yet still not firing, the crew collapsed into panic. Officers cried out, soldiers begged, some tore at their uniforms as if trying to escape their own skins. Commander screamed, hold yourselves together, but his words were dust. No one listened. The Empire was crumbling, not by war, not by fire, but by fear. Then the hum stopped, silence fell again, heavier than death. The Dreadnought lights dimmed, leaving only its vast shadow. The human voice returned for the last time in that moment. You will live, but you will remember. You will tell your Empire what you saw. You will tell them what waits in the dark, and you will fear us. The Dreadnought's lights blinked once, then faded. The massive ship began to move at last, slowly, silently, gliding into the darkness of space. Each moment it drifted farther, until finally it was gone, leaving the fleet alone, powerless, broken. The bridge was silent. No one spoke, no one moved. They only stared at the place where the ship had vanished. The commander trembled, his body weak. He looked at his officers, but none would meet his eyes. They no longer saw him as leader. They only saw him as a fool who had brought them before a god. In the lower decks, whispers spread. They spoke of the Dreadnought. In hushed tones, they spoke of judgment, of silence, of fear. Some swore it was alive. Some swore it was more than human. Some swore it was death itself. The fleet began to restart systems, slowly flickering back to life as though the Dreadnought had released them. Engines, thrusters, navigation, one by one. Power returned, yet none dared to move. No one dared to give the order to return home. The silence of the Dreadnought still hung over them, crushing their will. At last the commander whispered, set course back to the Empire, his voice hollow, broken, nothing like the voice of command it had once been. And the fleet turned their ships, limping away from the dead sector, crawling through space like wounded beasts. Every officer, every soldier, every soul marked by what they had seen. They would tell the story. They would spread the fear. They would speak of the silent fortress in the dark. The ship that needed no fire, no war, no death to conquer. The ship that judged them with silence. The ship that turned arrogance into terror, and far away, deeper than their eyes could see, the human Dreadnought drifted silent and patient, waiting for the next empire foolish enough to measure itself against humanity. The Vaishar fleet crawled through the endless dark, the engines weak, the hulls scarred not from battle but from silence. Every officer, every soldier carried the weight of what they had seen. The human Dreadnought had left them alive, yet it had taken something greater than life. It had taken their pride. The flagship, the commander, stood silent, his eyes empty. The bridge crew avoided looking at him, their faces pale, their hands shaking. The Dreadnought was gone, yet the fear remained. It clung to the walls, it lived in their breath, it echoed in every heartbeat. Some whispered it was a trick, some said it was a weapon too. Advanced to understand, some said it was alive, watching even now, though unseen, but none could deny the truth. They had felt that they had heard the human voice, and it had stripped them bare. The commander forced himself to speak, his voice dry. Weak, we returned to the Empire. Tell no one what happened. We report only technical failure. Nothing more, do you understand? His words were brittle but desperate. He wanted control to return, but it was already gone. One officer whispered loud enough for others to hear, "Lie to the Empire. And when they find out, they will kill us." All the whispers spread across the bridge like fire. Another voice followed. "No, they will not believe us. If we tell the truth, no one will. They will call us cowards." The crew shifted uneasily, their trust broken, their unity shattered. The commander slammed his fist against the rail. Silence, he shouted. "You will obey me." But his voice cracked and carried no weight. The fear of the Dreadnought had already undone him. Young officer rose from his seat, his face pale but his eyes fierce. He spoke loudly so all could hear. "We should tell the truth. We should warn them. We should tell the Empire what waits in the dark." His words cut the silence like a blade. The bridge crew turned to him, some nodding, others shaking their heads. Commander roared, "Sit down, you fool." But the officer did not sit. He stood taller. "The Dreadnought spared us. It gave us a message. We must deliver it. If we lie, if we hide it, then the Empire will send others, and they will die." His voice carried a conviction. The commander had lost. The crew looked between them. Doubt grew. Rebellion stirred. Whispers turned to arguments. Some agreed with the officer, some clung to the commander. Fear became anger, anger became division. Then the ship shuddered, alarms blared, systems flickered. One crewman screamed, "Weapons are locking." Onto our own fleet, the bridge erupted in chaos. Screens flashed, showing their guns turning inward, targeting their own sister ships. No commands were given, no orders spoken, yet the weapons armed themselves. The commander shouted, "Shut it down now." But no one could. Systems refused to obey. The crew watched in horror as their own warship became a threat to its allies. Panic spread across the fleet. Each ship shouting, "Over," comes weapons gone mad, targeting their own brother's engines, spinning out. Navigation collapsing. Fear turned into screams across the channels. The young officer shouted, "The Dreadnought, it warned us. This is its judgment. It is still here." Even unseen, the crew froze. The thought pierced them like a knife. If the Dreadnought was still watching, still testing, then their fate was already sealed. The commander bellowed, "Enough. I am still in command. You will obey me." But his words were drowned by the chaos. His officers ignored him. Some ran from their stations, some drew weapons on each other. Fear twisted into madness. Shouts turned to threats, threats turned to violence. The bridge became a storm of panic. One shot rang out, an officer fell, blood staining the floor. Silence followed for a single breath, then more shots erupted. The crew turned on itself, friend against friend, soldier against officer, all trust shattered by the silent memory of the Dreadnought. Commander tried to restore order, but no one listened. He shouted until his voice broke. He struck down one of his own men, but more turned their weapons on him. He felt the cold barrel against his back and froze. The young officer stepped forward, his voice steady. "Drop your weapon, Commander. You led us into this. You lied to us. You cannot lead anymore." The bridge fell silent, the crew staring. The commander trembled, rage in his eyes, but fear in his heart. Slowly, his weapon clattered to the floor. Officer spoke again. "We cannot hide this. We cannot pretend it never happened. The Dreadnought spared us so we could carry its message. We will return, and we will tell the Empire what we saw." The crew murmured, some nodded their heads, others stared in shock, but none raised their weapons. Against him, the commander screamed, "You are fools. The Empire will kill you for weakness. They will burn you for cowardice." But his words no longer carried strength. The crew dragged him from the command chair, his screams echoing down the hall until the doors sealed behind him. The young officer sat in the chair, his hands trembling but his eyes hard, set a course home, his voice calm, steady. For the first time since the Dreadnought appeared, the bridge moved with purpose. Systems obeyed, engines fired, and the fleet turned toward the Empire. Yet, in the silence of space, fear did not fade. Whispers grew and the lower deck's crew spoke of the Dreadnought as if it were watching even now. Some refused to sleep. Some swore they saw shadows move across the stars. Some wept, believing the Dreadnought would return at any moment. One ship crewman ended his own life, leaving a single message scratched into the wall. "We are judged." Another spoke of visions of fire of entire systems. Burning, another swore he heard the human voice in his dreams, repeating over and over, "You should not have scanned us." The fleet crawled forward. Broken unity, shattered trust gone. The empire they once served felt far away, yet the shadow of the Dreadnought felt near, closer than breath. The young officer knew he had only won a fragile hold on control. Fear still ruled every soul, and he wondered if the Dreadnought had ever truly left. Perhaps it waited unseen, watching them struggle, letting them tear themselves apart with their own fear, letting arrogance rot into madness, and in the endless dark, far behind them, or perhaps all around them, the human Dreadnought remained. Vast, silent, patient, waiting for the moment arrogance would rise again, so it could be broken once more. The fleet moved slowly through the dark void, their engines weak, their formation broken, their pride gone. They had once been the terror of the stars. The Vaishar Empire had been feared across 1,000 worlds, but now they drifted like shadows. Empty and afraid, the human Dreadnought had not destroyed them with fire. It had destroyed them with silence, and with silence it still followed them. Young officer sat in the command chair, his hands tight around the controls, his eyes staring ahead. He had taken command after the crew turned against their old leader. He had spoken of truth, he had spoken of survival, but even he felt the weight of fear in every breath. The Dreadnought was gone, yet it was not gone. Its memory filled the air. Its shadow lay over them like a storm that never ended. The crew whispered in the dark. They spoke of hearing voices, they spoke of dreams where the Dreadnought appeared. They spoke of systems failing even when no damage showed they were hunted. Not by fire, not by missiles, not by plasma, but by something far worse, the presence of the Dreadnought. The third day that comes came alive without warning. The voice returned. "Calm, steady human, you scanned us, you judged yourselves strong, now you will hear what you are." The sound filled every ship, it echoed across every deck. The crew froze, their hearts pounding. The young officer's hands shook, but he forced himself to listen. The voice spoke again. "Your empire has crushed the weak. Your empire has enslaved the small. You fed on fear, and you believed it made you strong. But you have never faced us. You've never faced humanity, and now you know the truth." Crew trembled, some fell to their knees, others covered their ears, but the voice reached deeper than sound. It pressed into their thoughts, it echoed in their bones. There was no escape, the young officer whispered softly, though the crew heard him.
Why are you doing this?
Why not finish us? Why not kill us?" The voice answered, "We do not need to kill you. Fear is enough. You will return to your empire. You will speak of us. You will tell them what you saw, and fear will spread faster than fire, faster than death." Commander, locked away in the lower decks, screamed against the sound. His voice hoarse, he shouted, "Lies! This is a trick! This is weakness!" But no one listened to him. His words were dust against the voice that filled them all then. The screens across every ship lit up, images flashing one after another, worlds burning. Not by human fire, but by Vaishar fire. Cities crushed under their rule, people's enslaved lives ended by their arrogance. The crew gasped as their crimes unfolded before them. No secret remained hidden. The Dreadnought had shown them to themselves. Voice said, "You built your empire on suffering. You believed fear was your weapon. Now fear is your cage. You will remember this. You will carry it with you, and your empire will tremble." Crew wept. Some screamed, some begged for forgiveness. Others tore at their uniforms as if they could strip the shame from their skin. The young officer sat, frozen, his eyes wide, his heart heavy. He felt the truth in the voice. He felt the weight of judgment. Then the images stopped. The screens went black. The voice fell silent. The silence was heavier than the words before. The crew stared into the dark, waiting for more, but nothing came. Only the Dreadnought. Absence filled the void. Whispers spread again. Is it gone? Has it finished? Will it return? Some begged to turn back, to flee into any direction away from the Dreadnought. Some begged to end their lives before it returned. Some whispered that the Dreadnought had marked them forever. that they would never be free. The young officer spoke his voice. Quiet but firm, set course home. We will do what it said. We will deliver the message. We will tell the Empire what we saw. His words carried no pride, no strength, only the heavy truth of survival. The crew obeyed, for they had no choice as the fleet turned engines, straining stars drifting past their view systems continued to fail. Lights flickered, weapons refused to arm, sensors spun without cause. Every failure felt like the Dreadnought. His hands still upon them, watching, waiting, testing. In the sleeping deck's dreams came filled with the voice, with the hum, with the image of a fortress in the void. Some woke screaming, others refused to sleep at all. Some whispered they could still hear it speaking, even in silence. The young officer walked the halls at night, hearing the whispers, hearing the fear. He knew their empire would not believe them. He knew their leaders would call them cowards, but he also knew the Dreadnought did not care. Belief did not matter. Truth did not matter. Only fear mattered, and fear was already spreading. On the fifth day, as the fleet crawled onward, the voice returned once more, softer, quieter, but even more terrifying. We are humanity. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek your empire. We seek only this. You will not touch us. You will not test us. You will not measure us. For if you do, you will know true fear. The crew froze again, their breath caught in their throats. The young officer bowed his head. The commander in the lower decks screamed again, until his voice broke, but none listened. The truth was carved into them, now carved deeper than any blade. The voice ended, silence returned, but now the silence was worse, for they knew it could return at any moment. They knew it could speak again. They knew. The Dreadnought was not gone. It was never gone. It was only waiting, watching. The fleet drifted on, broken, silent, filled with fear, each soul marked by the human Dreadnought, each soul carrying the message back to their empire, each soul knowing that their arrogance had ended the moment they dared to look at humanity, and far behind them, unseen, unheard, the Dreadnought remained vast, silent, patient, waiting for the next empire, foolish enough to believe it was strong. The fleet limped onward through the dark void, their engines weak, their formation broken, their silence heavy. The crew moved like ghost shadows of the warriors they had once been. The human Dreadnought had stripped them bare. They no longer felt like conquerors. They felt like prey, carrying a message of fear back to the empire that had created them. The young officer sat in the command chair, his eyes hollow, his hands tight on the controls. He had taken command when the crew rose against their old leader, but command felt meaningless now. The Dreadnought had given them purpose. It had told them to return. It had told them to speak of what they had seen. They were not leaders anymore. They were not soldiers anymore. They were messengers of terror. The crew whispered in the dark. Some swore the Dreadnought still followed them unseen. Some swore it was inside their minds. Some claimed they could feel its gaze pressing on their backs, even though the void around them was empty. No one truly believed they had escaped. No one truly believed it had let them goon the sixth day. The screens lit again without warning. The human voice returned, calm, steady, and unshaken. We are not blind to you. The words filled every ship we have seen your empire. We have seen what you are. The screens flashed alive again, images filling every corner of the fleet. This time not only of battles, not only of the Empire's wars, but of its sins, entire worlds, enslaved families, broken children crying. Cities burned to ash, screams rising into smoke. The images spread faster than fire, not just on the flagship, but across every vessel, every deck, every cabin crew. Elapsed weeping, others screamed in horror, some clawed at their faces, begging for the screens to stop, but the images did not stop. They showed camps filled with suffering. They showed chains. They showed executions carried out. In the name of the Empire, they showed the faces of those who had begged for mercy and been denied. The Dreadnought had seen everything. The voice spoke again. You call yourselves strong, but strength is not chains. Strength is not fire. Strength is not fear. You call yourselves rulers, but you are nothing more than thieves who prey on the weak. The commander locked away in the lower decks, raged at the screens. He shouted lies, propaganda, weakness. He cursed humanity and cursed his own crew, but his voice carried no weight even to his own ears. He felt the shame burning in his chest as his own crimes appeared. Before him he had executed innocents. He had destroyed cities, and now all could seethe. The crew turned their eyes away, but the screens followed them. Every face burned into their memory. Every crime painted across their walls. There was no escape. The Dreadnought was not showing them lies. It was showing them truth. The young officer whispered through the silence, "This is judgment." And though his voice was quiet, the crew heard him. They felt the truth in his words. The voice pressed on you, built your empire on the bones of the weak. You raised your banners on the graves of the helpless. You told yourselves this was strength, but now you see true strength. You see us, you see humanity, and you know. You cannot measure us. The crew bowed their heads. Some prayed, some cursed their empire, some cursed themselves. The weight of guilt crushed them as much as the fear then. The images changed, the screens filled with the faces of their leaders. The council of the empire, the ones who commanded the fleets, the ones who demanded conquest, the ones who fed on fear. Their voices echoed across the screens, promising glory, demanding loyalty, ordering slaughter, and as their words played, the voice of the Dreadnought spoke over them. They will fall. The fleet trembled, the crew gasped. Some covered their mouths in horror. The Dreadnought was not only showing their past, it was showing their future. It was promising the collapse of the empire itself. Young officer whispered again, "It is not just us they. Judge it is the empire itself." The words cut through the silence like a blade, and the crew shivered. The voice finished with a single line, "Carry this home, carry this truth. You will not be the first empire to fall. You will not be the last." Then the screens went dark, silence returned, but the silence was heavier than before. For now the crew understood. They were not only witnesses, they were weapons. The Dreadnought had turned them into a message that would strike their empire harder than any fleet ever could. The young officer stared at the stars, his hands shaking, his heart racing. He knew what awaited them. If they told the truth, their leaders would call them traitors, their empire would brand them liars. But the Dreadnought's voice echoed in his mind, "Fear will spread faster than fire, faster than death." And he knew the Dreadnought was right. The fleet drifted on. Some crew refused to eat. Some refused to sleep. Some sat in silence, staring at the walls as if waiting for the images to return. Many whispered that they could never go home. Many whispered that the empire was already dead. In the dark halls, mutiny sparked again. Whispers of killing themselves, whispers of fleeing into the void, whispers of destroying their ships before they reached home, so the message would never spread. But the young officer stood before them, his voice firm, though his body trembled. "You saw what I saw. You heard what I heard. We have no choice. We must return. We must speak. If we lie, if we hide, the Dreadnought will return, and it will finish us." His words cut through the chaos, and the crew fell silent. They obeyed not from loyalty, not from duty, but from fear. Fear of the Dreadnought, fear of silence, fear of the truth they could not escape. The fleet limped closer to Empire space. The young officer felt the shadow heavier than before. He wondered if the Dreadnought was still behind them. Unseen, he wondered if it had ever left. He wondered if they were still being watched, judged, waiting. His heart, he knew the answer. The Dreadnought was not gone. It never would be gone. It lived in their minds. It lived in their fear. It lived in their empire. No, and far away, deeper than stars, darker than void, the human Dreadnought waited, silent, patient, knowing that fear had already done its work, knowing that arrogance had already collapsed, knowing that the empire would soon fall, not by weapons, not by fire, but by the memory of one ship in the dark. The fleet reached the edge of Empire space, drifting slow and broken. The holes scarred, the engines weak, the silence heavier than any battle they had ever known. Once they had marched through the stars with pride, once their name had brought terror. Now they returned not as conquerors, but as shadows carrying the weight of a message they did not want to speak. Young officer sat in the command chair, his face pale, his eyes hollow. He had no illusions of victory. He had no illusions of safety. He knew what waited ahead. The Empire would demand answers. The Empire would demand loyalty. The Empire would never accept fear, but he also knew the Dreadnought's words were carved into them. They could not be forgotten. They could not be buried. The crew moved quietly, no laughter, no shouts, no pride, only whispers that grew sharper each day. Some whispered that they must tell the truth. Some whispered that they must lie. Some whispered that they should run far away and never return. Each whisper carried fear, and fear was stronger than command. Fear was stronger than loyalty. Fear was stronger than the Empire itself in the lower decks. The old commander sat in chains, his eyes burning with hatred. He spat curses at the young officer. He spat curses at the crew. He spoke of the Empire's strength. He spoke of vengeance. Yet no one listened. His voice was a ghost, his power gone. He was the symbol of what arrogance had cost them. The young officer walked the halls at night, listening to the whisper. Some swore they still heard the human voice in their dreams. Some swore the Dreadnought was still behind them unseen. Some claimed the stars themselves shifted as it followed them. Every fear, every doubt tore deeper at the unity of the fleet. When they crossed into Empire space, the messages began. The High Council demanded reports, demanded explanations, demanded victory. The young officer stared at the messages, his hands shaking. He knew he could not give them victory. He could not give them pride. He could only give them fear. He ordered the comms open. He ordered the truth. Broadcast. The crew stared in silence. Waiting, his voice shook, but he spoke. We faced something beyond us, something greater than us. We faced humanity. We faced the human Dreadnought. His words carried across every ship. His words reached the High Council. His words struck like knives. He told them of the scan. He told them of the silence. He told them of the hum that shook their bones. He told them of the voice calm and unshaken. He told them of the judgment. He told them of the crimes the Dreadnought had shown them. He told them of the message. You will not touch us, you will not measure us, or you will know true fear. The comms went silent. Then the council laughed. They mocked him. They mocked the crew. They called them weak. They called them cowards. They called them traitors. The young officer's voice was drowned in scorn. The council declared them broken. The council declared them unworthy. The council ordered them home for trial. The crew fell into despair. Some screamed, some begged to flee. Others whispered that the Dreadnought was right, that the Empire would never believe, that the Empire would destroy them from within. The flagship mutiny sparked. Again, soldiers raised weapons against officers' arguments, turned to shouts. Shouts turned to blood in the dark halls. Crew turned on each other. Loyalty gone, unity gone, each man and woman ruled only by fear. Young officer stood in the command chamber, his hands trembling as weapons were raised around him. He shouted, "We are already dead. If we lie, we die. If we tell the truth, we die. But if we carry the message, we live in fear, and that fear will spread." That is what it wanted. That is what humanity wanted. Do you not see we are already weapons of their making? The words cut deep. The crew froze. Some lowered their guns, some raised them higher. The ship shook with chaos. The Empire's command blared across the comms, demanding obedience, demanding loyalty, threatening destruction. But their voices were thin against the Dreadnought. Memory. One by one, officers turned away from the Empire. They shut down the comms. They cut the orders. The council's voices faded into silence. The young officer stood tall, his eyes fierce. We will not return to die. We will not return to kneel. We will carry the message in another way, though. Crew looked at him, some with hope, some with fear, some with hatred, but none with pride that had been burned away forever on. The other ship's chaos spread. Some captains obeyed the council and turned their bows toward the Empire. Some captains followed the young officer and shut their comms. Others fled into the void, scattering like leaves in the wind. The fleet that had once moved as one now shattered into pieces. Empire's strength cracked not by weapons, not by battles, but by fear. Every officer, every soldier who had seen the Dreadnought carried its shadow into their halls. Every whisper of its silence spread across their ranks. Every dream of its voice weakened their loyalty. No order could erase it. No punishment could silence it. No fire could burn it away. The young officer sat in the chair once more, his body heavy, his mind broken. He had led a mutiny. He had spoken truth. He had broken the fleet, yet he felt no victory. Only the Dreadnought's silence pressing still on his chest. He knew the Empire was already falling, piece by piece, not from rebellion, not from war, but from within the old commander. In Chains laughed, a bitter laugh, his voice filled with hate. "You have doomed us all. You have done the work of the humans. You have killed the Empire without firing a single shot." The young officer looked at him, his face cold, and answered, "No, it was already dead the moment we saw them, the moment we scanned them. It was already over. The ship drifted on fractured, scattered, lost the Empire behind them. It's already trembling under the weight of fear they had carried home, and in the endless void unseen. Unheard, the human dreadnought remained patient, vast, eternal, waiting for the next Empire, foolish enough to believe it could measure humanity. The Empire shook from within. The fleets that had once obeyed every order without question now moved in silence, hesitant, broken. The council shouted commands, but the voices no longer carried weight. Whispers of the human dreadnoughts spread faster. Then fire, whispers of the silence, whispers of the hum that rattled the bones, whispers of the single scan that had turned courage to fear. No decree could erase those whispers, no threat could bury them. The fleet that had carried the message home was no longer one fleet. It was fragments scattered across space. Some ships fled to hidden systems, never to return. Some ships limped back toward the Empire, hoping to beg forgiveness. Some ships followed the young officer, their faith in the council shattered, their faith in conquest gone. They followed not because they believed in him, but because they feared the dreadnought. More than they feared their own empire, the young officer sat in the command chair, his eyes bloodshot, his hands shaking, his body heavy with exhaustion, yet his mind would not rest. The dreadnought's voice lived inside his head as if it had carved its words into his very soul. "You will not touch us. You will not measure us, or you will know true fear," he repeated the line in his thoughts again and again, each time colder, each time heavier. Crew moved like shadows around him. They no longer spoke of victory. They no longer spoke of duty. They spoke only of fear. They whispered in the halls that the dreadnought was still behind them, unseen, patient, waiting to strike. They swore they could feel it in the dark, pressing on their backs, watching, always watching. When the council demanded their return, the young officer shut down the coms. When the council promised mercy, he shut them down again. When the council threatened destruction, he shut them down once more. His crew watched in silence. None dared stop him. They had all seen too much. They had all heard too much. Then one night the silence broke. The stars flickered and the screens lit without warning. Every ship in the fleet froze as the voice returned, calm, steady, unshaken. "You have carried our words. You have carried our truth. You have seen your empire crack under its own weight." The crew fell too. Their knees, some wept, some covered their faces, some pressed their hands to their ears. But the voice filled every corner. There was no escape. The young officer clenched his fists, his body trembling, but he did not turn away. He stared at the screens. His voice raw. "Say it," he whispered. "Say the end." The screens shifted. The ships of the Empire filled the view, vast, countless millions of them gathered in orbit. Around their core, world-proud banners raised. The council stood tall, declaring strength, declaring loyalty, declaring control. But the voice spoke over them. Their empire is already dust, their pride already ash. They rule nothing but shadows. Images spread faster than thought, rebellions sparking on distant worlds, soldiers turning against their officers, colonies casting down the Empire's banners, chains, broken fires, rising not against humanity, not against the dreadnought, but against their own masters. The council shouted in denial, but their words were drowned. The Empire was tearing itself apart. The crew gasped, their eyes wide, their hearts pounding. Some whispered it was lies, some whispered it was prophecy, but the young officer whispered it is. In judgment, the voice pressed on. "We do not conquer, we do not chain, we do not burn, we only show truth, and truth is enough." Old commander, still in chains, laughed a bitter, broken laugh, his teeth bared, his voice shaking with hate. "They have destroyed us without a war. They have broken us without a shot." His laughter echoed through the halls until it collapsed into sobs. The screen shifted once more, this time showing the dreadnought itself, vast, endless, impossible. It filled the stars, it filled the minds of all who saw it, silent, unmoving, eternal. And the voice spoke again. "You will tell this story, you will carry it beyond your worlds, you will speak our name with fear and with awe, you will not forget humanity. You will not forget what you saw." The crew trembled, some clawed at their eyes to block the sight, some fell too. The floor shaking, Others simply stared, frozen, unable to look away. The young officer stood his voice. Gosh, barely more than breath, we will tell it, though. Screens went dark, the voice faded, the silence returned. But it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of something greater, something eternal. Every heart beat faster, every breath grew shorter, for they knew. The Dreadnought had given them its final command. The fleet drifted unshattered, broken. Leaderless, yet every crew member, every officer, every soldier carried the same memory burned into their minds. They had seen the end of Arrogance. They had seen the end of Empire. They had seen the human Dreadnought, and survived only to carry its shadow when the fragments of the fleet finally limped back into Empire space. They did not return as heroes. They did not return as soldiers. They returned as ghosts, their eyes hollow. Their words heavy. They spoke of the Dreadnought. They spoke of the silence. They spoke of the fear and everywhere. They went, the whispers grew louder. Colonies refused to obey soldiers. Deserted governors fled, the council raged, but their voices carried no power now. The Dreadnought ruled without lifting a weapon, without sending an army, without firing a shot at. Ruled through memory, through whispers, through fear. The young officer disappeared into the shadows. No one knew where he went. Some said he wandered the stars, telling the story to anyone who would listen. Some said he vanished into the void, searching for the Dreadnought once more. Some said he was taken by the ship itself, but his name lived on as the first messenger of humanity. The old commander never left his cell. His mind broke, his pride shattered. He muttered the same words day after day. They showed us everything. They showed us everything, until his voice became nothing more than a whisper lost in the dark hand. So the story spread faster than fire, from one world to another, from one empire to another, from one species to another. Whispered in fear, whispered in awe. One glimpse at the human Dreadnought, and Arrogance became terror across the stars. Rulers trembled, officers hesitated, armies paused. They remembered the story. They remembered the silence. They remembered the hum. They remembered the voice that had judged them all, and far beyond sight, beyond reach, the human Dreadnought remained. Still silent, patient, waiting for the next empire. Foolish enough to believe it could measure humanity, waiting for the next fleet. Foolish enough to look into its eyes, waiting for the next moment when Arrogance would turn once again to fear.